Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. Today is the next video in my series of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Commander deck techs. I'm releasing a new TMNT Commander deck every Thursday through mid-April when Secrets of Strixhaven drops, in addition to my usual Monday Commander deck tech videos. Hey, it's the Turtles, and we're gonna have fun with it. So if you have a request for a specific TMNT Commander you'd like to see me build, let me know in the comments below. As you see, today our commander is Madam Null Power Broker, the former CEO of the Null Group. This conglomerate of amoral businesses sought to create mutants and exploit them for profit, and so Null was a major antagonist for the Turtles. Another iteration of this character was touted as one of the greatest threats to our heroes in a half-shell, second only to Shredder. I suppose it's not surprising that a freewheeling family like the Ninja Turtles was viewed as a threat by the leader of a soulless corporate entity. But in any case, I'm excited to show you what I put together for Ms. Null. But before we get started, let's go over my deck building template. I like to build my decks around my commander. I want to show off why it's such a cool card, and why I put it at the head of my deck. So I take about 30 cards and put it toward whatever that card asks me to do. This is our game plan. It's what we do at the table, and how we try to win. 30 more cards go towards supporting that game plan in the form of card advantage, acceleration, and interaction pieces. I usually run 1 or 2 sweepers, sometimes more if it would play into the game plan, sometimes none at all, but I almost always keep to a floor of 38 lands, so I can make sure I hit my land drops, and I can cast my spells, and I can play Magic. So let's talk about our commander. Madam Null Power Broker is a 1/3 legendary demon advisor for 2 and a black with Death Touch. She says whenever another creature we control enters, we may pay life equal to that creature's power, and if we do, we put that many +1/+1 counters on that creature. So if you're new to Magic, welcome! I'm going to go over the ideas this deck is built around, both in terms of the mechanics and the way it plays at the table. Then I'll go through each card individually and talk about how it works and why it helps that game plan. If you have questions, post them in the comments. So Madam Null gives us a chance to do something that Black does pretty well, which is play a stompy deck. We get out big creatures and attack in so that our opponents either have to make disadvantageous blocks, or more often than you'd expect, surrender some of their life total to protect their board. It's a classic strategy that we often see in green, simply because that's the color with access to the best mana acceleration and the biggest creature payoffs. But why should we have to play creatures with huge stats and commensurately huge mana costs? Black is full of so many medium or even small creatures that come with great keywords, powerful interest triggers, or both. They may not have the stats to compete with green's giant monsters, but can't we make them work anyway? We sure can. All we have to do is make a little deal. After all, we have so much life just sitting there, practically rotting in our ledger. Why not pay a mere pittance of it to our commander whenever we have a new creature enter to make that creature twice as big? Why not invest just a fraction of our resources to hit our opponents twice as hard the next turn? And then we can do it again with our next creature, and our next, until our board is massive and our life total is, in the single digits. Why don't people make cautionary tales about demonic bargains? Why don't they put them in Magic? Annie. Okay, I get it. But I do like the idea of playing good creatures for low mana costs and using life to make them into serious threats. So how can we offset that life loss? Luckily, black is the number 2 color behind white in how many cards it has with Lifelink, and it has a host of other ways to gain or regain life as well. Many of those ways involve draining our opponent's life totals, so we can diversify into those effects too. Sure, we're having to pay first and get our reward next, but there's no way that can come back to bite us, right? We just run more payoffs, both for losing life and for gaining, or just having it, and trust that it'll all even out in the end. So our deck is full of brutes, the street-level minions, who can do the kind of work with which someone in a high-tower office like Madam Null would never deign to dirty her suit. These brutes come with powerful keyword abilities like Menace, Trample, Death Touch, and especially Lifelink, all of which get better when we pay our commander to Hulk them out. Many of these creatures also come with sorcery-like effects or sweet triggered abilities stapled to them, meaning their value isn't limited to their now swollen stats. It's not hard to make back our investments of life simply by swinging in, and whether we kill our opponents or their blockers, we're still in the black at the end of business. Speaking of which, we're a black deck, so our removal is efficient and strong. We have plenty of ways to evade our opponent's defenses or force them to lose their blockers to our death-touching threats. In fact, we're so secure in our position that we have cards to give blockers to our opponents, just so they can see what kind of good faith offerings we have in store for them. And add in some ways to manipulate our many counters, some extra sources of those counters, some flexible recursive effects, and even some token creation of our own, and we're set up to increase our market share with every passing turn. We project a positive ROI for each new creature we onboard, and we can put stock in our CEO as our opponent's life totals drop and ours skyrockets. That line may waver a bit in the process, but when all is said and done, and we've achieved a level of regulatory capture undreamt of in the most wood-paneled of Warden's cabals, it'll become apparent that those dips are merely the cost of doing business. You'll enjoy this deck if you like knowing that it doesn't matter how your life total fluctuates as long as it's the last to drop to 0, or if you like the idea of inviting your opponents to take a close look at your portfolio, then turning it sideways and showing them the real meaning of a hostile takeover. So as usual, this Moxfield list we're going over today is linked in the video's description. At the bottom of it, you will see a considering section, filled with cards that I thought about putting into the deck, but which ultimately did not make the cut for this build. However, if you have a bigger budget or a smaller one, if you have a different focus you want for a version of this deck, or if you like what I've done and you want to go harder into it, that considering section is a great place for you to begin when you build your own Madame Null Power Broker deck. So we're going to start with the simplest section, our brutes. These are creatures that do a number of different things, but after they have done their enters trigger, or if they just have big stats and good abilities on their own, their job is to come in for us to make them real big with our commander, and then for us to just attack with them until our opponents kill them or they kill our opponents. So we're going to start with Ayara's Oathsworn. This is 1 and a black for a 2/2 human knight with menace. Or, and then you can substitute this for every single one of these cards, it's 1 and a black plus 2 life for a 4/4 with menace. 2 life for a 4/4 menace is extremely powerful on top of 2 mana, especially since we're only paying 2 mana for it, so we could get this out on turn 2. Now, turn 2 is not a good time for us to do it because our commander's not out yet. But not terrible either for this particular card, because Ayara's Oathsworn says, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, if it has fewer than 4 +1/+1 counters on it, we put a +1/+1 counter on it. And then if it has exactly 4 +1/+1 counters on it, we search our library for a card, put it in our hand, and shuffle. So Ayara's Oathsworn wants to go on a quest. It wants to attack with menace and get bigger each time, and the 4th time it does it, as well as every subsequent time, it's going to Demonic Tutor for us. Demonic Tutor in our Madame Null deck, it's like I planned it. What's great about this is if we play this before our commander, we've got a 2/2 menace that we can attack with on turn 3, which many of the times we're going to be able to get in with. An opponent may only have 1 creature, and then the turn after that, it's now a 3/3 menace, which is still probably pretty evasive. But if it comes in after our commander hits the battlefield, we pay the 2 mana and 2 life, and it starts off as a 4/4 menace. That's already much harder to block. And we just keep swinging in and getting it bigger and bigger until it is a 6/6 menace. Because of course, it gets to 4 counters rather than having put 4 counters on itself with its own ability. So if we just start with 2, it's sort of halfway done with its quest anyway. And we can just attack in, and every time we do, and we get to do damage to an opponent, of course, we're going to get to find whatever card we think is best in that moment. Sometimes that's just going to be a basic swamp, but a lot of the times we're going to be looking for whatever our biggest threat or our best form of removal would be in that moment. Ayara's Oathsworn is great for us. Also, amazing art. Since this is a knight from Eldraine, you can see Castle Lochthwain in the background, and this is one of the basic swamps from original Throne of Eldraine. Anyway, my favorite set, love it. Next is Hunted Horror. I mentioned we have a couple of cards that give blockers to our opponents. This is one of the most fun ones. Double black for a 7/7 Trampling Horror. You read that right. But when it enters, target opponent creates 2 3/3 green Centaur creature tokens with protection from black. That's okay. Protection from black doesn't mean there's nothing we can do to it. It doesn't mean we can't just straight up remove them. But what's nice about this is we're giving 2 Centaur Coursers, essentially, with protection from black, to one opponent, then we could just attack a different opponent. Or the other opponent. I mean, we can just have our Hunted Horror swing in, and those 3/3s will just damage us endlessly if they attack us, because we can't block them since they have protection from black, unless we use our one non-black artifact creature to do so. But we have enough life gain that we don't mind taking that 6 damage from someone each turn, especially when they're having to face down 3 opponents, including us, that they might be able to use those centaurs with anyway. Black is not an unpopular color in Commander. In addition, it's worth noting that protection from black is not just like a black hole that damage goes into. If we attack with our Hunted Horror, they can block it with their 2/3/3s, and those 3/3s will do damage to our Horror, and the Horror will assign 3 damage to one of them and 3 damage to the other, and trample over 1 more damage. So we're still doing 1 damage to our opponent, and none of these creatures are dying, so we can keep doing that every time we want. Except, in this deck, this is 2 mana and 7 life for a 14/14 trample that still just makes 2 3/3s. So we attack with it, they block with both of their centaurs, and we're still trampling over for 8 damage. 8 damage is 1/5 of the life total you start with in Commander. So yeah, Hunted Horror is really powerful. 2 mana for this kind of effect is very strong. The likelihood that we're going to die to our own green centaur creature tokens, or the ones that we've made ourselves, is also pretty funny, so it's not even a problem. Yeah, very strong card in this deck. And paying 7 mana, or 7 life rather, for a creature without lifelink, not a big deal. We have lots of ways to get it back. Morlun, Devourer of Spiders, is one of them. This is a 2/1. Now, notably, there are only 2, maybe 3 creatures in this deck that have a toughness of 1, and Morlun technically isn't 1 because he has an X in his casting cost and enters with a number of counters on him equal to the X. That's relevant to us for a reason that will become apparent a little while later in this deck list. It's just worth noting, the few creatures we have with a 1 in their toughness mostly have some form of kicker and ways to put counters on themselves as they enter, rather than once they've entered with our commander. But they still will with our commander once they enter if we pay that life. So Morlun is a 2/1 legendary vampire villain for X and double black with lifelink. Morlun enters with a number of counters on him equal to that X, and when he enters, he does that much damage, the X, to target opponent. Remember, when he does that damage, he's got lifelink, so we're going to gain life off of it too. So if we have Morlun come in and X is 2, so we're paying 2 in double black. Morlun's going to come in as a 4/1. He's going to immediately do 2 damage to an opponent, and we're also going to get a trigger from our commander to let us pay 4 life, since 4 at that point will be his power. We can pay that 4 life, which means we're only down 2 life since we just did 2 damage with Morlun and gained life off of that. So we went up 2 and we're down 4, so we're down an aggregate of 2 to make Morlun have 6 counters on him total, making him an 8/7 lifelink for 4 mana and 4 life. Very, very strong. Now, every time we attack with him, we're gaining 8 life again, and we were only really down 2 life. No, I'm sorry, we were only down 4 life, so we're up 4 life after that. Yeah, this can be very strong for us. Null Priest of Oblivion is our, I think, only other 1 toughness creature, and it has kicker, but it doesn't come in with counters with kicker. So this is the one card that we may not want to play in one specific circumstance. We'll see it soon. This is 1 and a black for a 2/1 Vampire Cleric with kicker for 3 and a black, meaning we can pay a total of 4 and double black to play it kicked. It's a 2/1 with lifelink and menace, pretty good. And when it enters, if it was kicked, we return target creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield. So either this is a 2/1 lifelink, which means if it comes in and doesn't immediately die, which we'll talk about again soon, we can pay 2 life, and now it's a 4/3 lifelink for 2 mana and 2 life. Or all that, and we pay an extra 4 mana and resurrect something, which we can also pay we can pay life equal to whatever we've reanimated's power, and make it huge too. So yeah, Null Priest of Oblivion for 2 mana and 2 life, we get a 4/3 lifelinker with menace. Pretty good, even compared to Ayara's Oathsworn, which is the same amount of life and mana, and we get one more point of toughness, but no lifelink. So different ways to get good things out of both of those. Next is Baleful Amit from Amonkhet. I actually love this card. I think it's pretty cute. Look at this cute little guy. This is a 4/3 Crocodile Demon with Lifelink for 2 and a black, so already pretty good on rate. But when it enters, we put a -1/-1 counter on target creature we control. That can include the Amit, it can be our commander. But this is an enters trigger. It triggers at the same time as our commander. So let's look at the ways we can do that. Since we control both of these creatures, we control both of their triggers. So we can put them on the stack at the same time in whatever order we like. The easier way to do it is to have the Baleful Amit's enters trigger resolve second. So our commander resolves first. We say we're going to pay 4 life to put 4 counters on this, making it into an 8/7, and then we put a -1/-1 counter on the Amit, which will just cancel out one of the 4 counters we just put onto it, making it into a 7/6. A 7/6 lifelink for 3 mana and 4 life. That's pretty good. We're going to get our life back very quickly. We could also do it the other way. We put the -1/-1 counter on the Amit first, it becomes a 3/2. Then we pay 3 life, since that's now its power, to put 3 +1/+1 counters on it. It will cancel out one of those. One of those will cancel out the -1/-1 counter we had, and it becomes a 6/5 with lifelink. So slightly smaller, but we only paid 3 life versus 1 point higher, and we paid 1 more point of life. But again, we don't have to put that -1/-1 counter on the Amit itself. I'm just trying to demonstrate that it's easy to do so. Very simple and interesting on how to order those enters triggers, since we're using the Amit to sort of represent that. The same is true for Morlun, if we wanted to look at it that way. If we make X = 2, like I mentioned before, Morlun enters. Oh, actually, Morlun enters with, so that's different. He is entering with those counters, so they're already on him, as opposed to the Amit, which enters and then that counter gets put on a creature we control, maybe it. That is the way that our commander's ability works. It's once it enters, rather than it enters with. Just so you know. Next we have Drana, Liberator of Malakir. This is a little bit of an interesting one in this deck. This is a 2/3 legendary vampire ally for 1 and double black. Drana has flying and first strike, but not lifelink. And it says whenever Drana deals combat damage to a player, we put a +1/+1 counter on each attacking creature we control. Now it seems like that wouldn't make any sense, because Drana's doing that combat damage with all the other attackers, so they're not going to get that counter until after the attack. Except for the fact that Drana has first strike. So Drana's going to put a counter on each attacking creature, including herself, and any creature that didn't attack with first strike damage is going to be able to use that counter when it does regular damage. Or if it's a double striker, it'll get to do both. So yeah, Drana is here to put extra counters on our creatures, which is a thing that we don't have a lot of in this deck. We mostly just rely on the counters that our commander gives us, but being able to make our creatures incrementally bigger with Drana is pretty great. Next is Exsanguinator Cavalry. This does not seem... this feels weird in this deck, but it actually works great for us. This is a 2/3 Vampire Knight for 2 and a black with Menace and Lifelink. 3 mana for a 2/3 with Menace and Lifelink, already pretty sweet. And it says whenever a knight we control deals combat damage to a player, we put a 1/1 counter on that creature and create a blood token. Blood tokens are artifacts that if we pay 1, tap, and discard a card and sacrifice the blood, we get to draw a card. So it's a way for us to say, we have a card in hand we don't need, let's throw it away and get a different one. Just nice to have them sitting around. It also triggers on knights, which includes itself, it includes Ayara's Oathsworn, and we have one more knight that we'll see soon. But even if all this happened simply on itself, this is a 2/3 Menace Lifelink that gets bigger every time it does combat damage to a player. Or if we pay the 2 life when it comes in, this is a 4/5 Menace Lifelink for 3 that gets bigger every time it does damage to a player. Just very strong for us in the 3-drop slot. Grim Dancer is next. This is a card I loved in Ikoria's limited environment. This is 1 and double black for a 3/3 Nightmare that enters with 2 different counters on it. We get to choose between Menace, Death Touch, and Lifelink. So oftentimes in this deck, I'll choose Menace and Lifelink, but Death Touch is fine too. Usually, Menace and Death Touch means you're going to be trading up as a 2-for-1 with it if they're blocking with 2 things. but I don't like trading for tokens typically, so I want Lifelink. Death Touch is pretty good evasion, Menace is actual evasion, so I usually do Menace and Lifelink, but obviously you can do whatever you like. It's just fun to be able to do this, especially when, if you pay 3 extra life on top of it, you're spending 3 mana for a 6/6 with Menace and Lifelink, or Death Touch and Lifelink, or Menace and Death Touch. Grim Dancer is really fun in that. Next up we have Gumdrop Poisoner. This is an adventure creature. What that means is, Gumdrop Poisoner is 2 and a black for a 3/2 human warlock with lifelink that says when it enters, up to 1 creature gets -X until end of turn, where X is the amount of life we gained this turn. So if we've already gotten life this turn from some of our lifelinkers, maybe we've gained 6 or 7 life. Gumdrop Poisoner will come in and give up to 1 target creature -6, -6, or -7 until end of turn. However, Gumdrop Poisoner also has Tempt with Treats, an instant adventure built onto her. The way this works is, when Gumdrop Poisoner is in your hand, you can play the creature, and then it's just a creature. Or you can play this instant, which is a single black to create a food token. And once you do that, you exile the card, and you can play the creature half of it from exile, as though it were in your hand, just at normal timing rules. So you can either play the adventure first or the creature first. But if you play the creature, you can't play the adventure. It's either adventure and then creature, or just creature. Once the creature's on the battlefield, unless you can get it back into your hand, you're not going to be able to tempt with treats. So it does feed itself though. You pay a black, you get a food token, maybe you have the mana to crack it and then play the Gumdrop Poisoner, either the same turn or the next turn, and it has gained you 3 life from eating that food. Or you can just hang out with that food, and if you need more life later on, it'll be there for you. Anyway, you play the Poisoner for 3 mana and 3 life, and you get a 6/5 lifelink that hurts something when it comes in. Or maybe just kills something. Pretty good. Look at this Gumdrops. Hagra Constrictor is next. This is 2 and a black for a 0/0 snake that comes in with 2 1/1 counters on it. So it comes in as a 2/2, we can pay 2 life, make it a 4/4. And it says each creature we control with a +1/+1 counter on it has Menace. This is going to be basically all of the creatures in our deck. It's pretty unlikely that we're going to play a creature other than our commander that doesn't have counters on it, or that won't have counters on it, because we want to make everything we play bigger with our commander. There are a couple of creatures that exist as sort of enchantments, like we could block with them, but we're probably not attacking with them. But those are so sort of few and far between with our many brutes. So Hagra Constrictor gives us additional evasion for all of our creatures with counters. Next up is another one of our creatures that makes tokens for an opponent. This is Hunted Bone Brute, 2 and a black for a 6/2 skeleton beast with Menace, not Trample. It says, when it enters, target opponent creates 2 1/1 white dog creature tokens, because the dogs, I guess, want the bones. And when it dies, each opponent loses 3 life. So this is a nice little drain effect for our opponents. It comes in for 3 mana and 6 life, and it becomes a 12/8 Menace. A 12/8 Menace attacks all day. We don't care if an opponent has 2 dogs, because we either just attack them and kill both dogs, or we attack someone else and those dogs are not doing much against us with our 6/8 Menace. The Hunted Bone Brute also has Disguise for 1 and a black. Disguise is an ability from Murders at Karlov Manor that says, when this is in our hand, we can pay 3 generic mana to play this face down as a 2/2 creature with Ward 2. And then, at any time we have priority, we can pay its Disguise cost to turn it face up. So that's all fine, and we might do that in this deck. It's a possibility. The trick here is, if you disguise it, it enters face down, so this enters trigger won't trigger. And then you reveal it, maybe after you attack with it, you pay the disguise cost to flip it back up, and haha, it's a 6/2 Menace. Now they're having trouble blocking something quite so big, and it never makes the dogs because it came in face down. The challenge is, if this comes in face up as a 6/2, our commander is going to trigger, and we're going to pay 6 life and make it bigger. If it comes in face down as a 2/2, our commander will trigger and we'll pay 2 life to make it a 4/4. Meaning when we flip it over with Disguise, it's just going to be an 8/4. 8/4 is still very good for an 8/4 menace. Totally all right, especially since we can pay the 3 mana to disguise it and then 2 mana on another turn if we wanted to split it up. But that 3 mana to disguise it is the same as 3 mana to just cast it. But then our opponent gets these dogs, which is, again, not that big of a drawback. Now, if we want it to be so that our opponent doesn't get the dogs and we still get our Hunted Bone Brute at full 12/8 power, the way we can do that is this. We cast it disguised for 3 generic mana. It enters as a 2/2. Our commander's ability goes on the stack, and we respond to it by undisguising it. We pay 2 more mana. So it enters as a 2/2, which means this enters trigger doesn't trigger. Our commander's ability goes on the stack, and we undisguise it, making it into a 6/2. And now, our commander's ability will resolve, see the Hunted Bone Brute's 6 power, and we are allowed to pay 6 life as part of the resolution, and make it that 12/8. So, several different ways to play this. Either we play it for just its casting cost, we get a 6/2, or if we pay for it, a 12/8, and an opponent gets 2 dogs. Or we disguise it, it just comes in as a 2/2, and our opponent, or our commander triggers, and we can make it a 4/4. Or we play it disguised, our commander triggers, and before that resolves, we undisguise it, so we're paying a total of 5 mana, and then 6 life. And we're getting the same result as if we only paid the 3 mana, except that no opponent makes these 2 dogs. So that is a possibility for us. Maybe it's worth it. I think it's much better to be able to just play this for 3 and let someone have some dogs, because we're going to be able to deal with them later, or even right away with the Bone Brute, basically, anyway. So yeah, I think Bone Brute is a lot of fun. Maybe not quite as powerful as our Hunted Horror, because the Hunted Horror has Trample, but still really sweet, and the dogs are much less threatening than 2 3/3s with Pro Black. So yeah, this is our last knight, since we were talking about knights for the Exsanguinator Cavalry, good grief. I know how to say a word. This is Murderous Rider from Throne of Eldraine. This is another adventure creature. 1 and double black gives us a 2/3 zombie knight with lifelink that says when it dies, we put it on the bottom of its owner's library. That's so we can't continually reanimate it. However, it has Swift End as an adventure, which is the same cost, 1 and double black, for an instant that destroys a creature or planeswalker and costs us 2 life. We can then play the Rider, and of course we'll be able to get that life we lost back through its lifelink ability, especially if we pay 2 more life to make this into a 4/5 for 3 with lifelink. So yeah, Swift End, we want to sort of hold this in our hand as much as we're able to, so that we can kill what we need to kill, and then play the Rider. Next up is Nighthawk Scavenger. This is from Zendikar Rising. 1 and double black gives us a vampire rogue with a toughness of 3, and a power equal to 1 plus the number of card types among cards in our opponent's graveyards. So as our opponent's graveyards get more card types in them, Nighthawk Scavenger gets bigger. Its power goes up. And it has Flying, Death Touch, and Lifelink, so pretty good. So at the bare minimum, we play this and there's no cards in any graveyards of our opponents. This will come in as a 1/3. Our commander will trigger. We pay a life to put a counter on this, and it becomes a 2/4. A 2/4 Flying, Death Touching Lifelinker is already pretty good. It's already better than a Vampire Nighthawk, even though we had to pay a life for it. But if it comes in later, and there's more things in our opponent's graveyards, it'll scale up. We can pay more life based on its higher power and get more counters on it. Or it comes in as a 1/3, we pay the life, it becomes a 2/4, and it just gets more and more power as our opponent's graveyards get more full. So this scales either way, very nice for us. Karsi Revenant is next. This is from Tarkir Dragonstorm. Also, 1 and double black, this is a 3/3 vampire with Flying, Death Touch, and Lifelink. What an incredible rate. This is just very, very strong. 3 mana and 3 life to make a 6/6 Flying, Death Touch, Lifelink. Yeah, I'll run that all day. Also, really gross. Amazing art. It also has Renew for 2 and a black. That means once it's in our graveyard, we can pay 2 and a black and exile it from our graveyard as a sorcery to put a flying counter, a death touch counter, and a lifelink counter on target creature. It all has to be the same creature, of course, but we make something a flyer with death touch and lifelink, which could be our Hunted Bone Brute. You know, maybe it's a 12/8 flying, death touch, lifelink menace. That seems pretty good. after we've gotten all of our value out of the Revenant itself, we definitely don't want to just, if we can help it, we don't want to just, discard it and then use this ability to make something bigger, but we sure could. It's a nice option to have. It's just, that's a little less appealing to me than paying 3 life and 3 mana to get a 6/6 flying Death Touch Lifelink and knowing we can still do this later. I mentioned Nighthawk Scavenger. I mentioned the Vampire Nighthawk. Well, we've got one here. This is from, originally from Zendikar, I believe, but Zendikar? Yeah, originally from Zendikar. Recently reprinted in Foundations, thank goodness. It is 1 and double black for a 2/3 Vampire Shaman with Flying, Death Touch, and Lifelink. It's just 3 keyword abilities that make it great. A 2/3 flyer with Death Touch and Lifelink. We pay 3 mana, we pay 2 life. It comes in as a 4/5 Flying, Death Touch, Lifelink. Very strong. That's all it needs to be for us. We have Aetherborn Marauder here. This is 3 and a black for a 2/2 Aetherborn Rogue with Flying and Lifelink. So, not quite as good of a rate as our Vampire Nighthawk, but when it enters, we can move any number of +1/+1 counters from other permanents we control onto this creature. So again, that's an enters trigger. Normally, this would come in and our commander would trigger and we'd be able to pay 2 life and make it a 4/4 Flying Lifelink for 4. But if we let this trigger first, maybe we steal 3 counters from our other permanents, put them on here. It's now a 5/5, which lets us, when our commander's ability resolves, pay 5 life, and now it's a 10/10 Flying Lifelink. That's pretty good. If we trust that our opponents aren't going to be able to remove it, that's extremely good. Because it might be that this comes in later in the game, when our opponents have built up their boards and have sort of exhausted their removal for the moment, and we're able to steal 10 counters from across our board, or even more than that. 10 counters that makes this a 12/12, then our commander's ability resolves. We pay 12 life, and it's a 24/24 Flying Lifelinker. That can do a lot for us, or, we lose it to someone's Doomblade. I guess Doomblade wouldn't kill it, but someone's Go for the Throat. Yeah. That's just how it plays. That just seems fun to me. Alright, Eradicator Valkyrie is next. This is from Kaldheim. 2 and double black for a 4/3 Angel Berserker with Flying Lifelink and Hexproof from Planeswalkers. In all honesty, this is likely not to come up, but if someone has a Planeswalker, like a Teferi or something, and they want to use it to tuck our Eradicator Valkyrie, well, they can't. It's got Hexproof from Planeswalkers. It's just sort of a weird line of text that I think is cool. But in any case, a 4 mana, 4/3 Flying Lifelink. So we pay 4 life when it comes into our commander, and it becomes an 8/7 Flying Lifelink and Hexproof from Planeswalkers. That's already very strong. And it has a Boast ability. Boast is an activated ability we can only use if it has attacked, and only once each turn. But we can do it at instant speed. So we can do this during the Declare Attacker step. After we declare this as an attacker, before anyone gets to block, we can pay 1 and a black and sacrifice a creature to force each opponent to sacrifice a creature or Planeswalker. Usually, that's not something we're going to be doing with the Valkyrie. The Valkyrie is here to be a brute. It's going to be an 8/7 Flying Lifelinker. That seems very strong. But if we have the ability to use this, and it's good for us, then we might as well. Especially since it does not say sacrifice another creature. So if it looks like an opponent's going to kill the Valkyrie, well, their kill spell's on the stack. We, assuming this is, once we've attacked with the Valkyrie that turn, we can pay 1 and a black, sack the Valkyrie, and each opponent has to sacrifice a creature or Planeswalker, and their kill spell fizzles. So it's like a 2-for-1. Seems good. Next we have Fell Beast of Mordor from the Lord of the Rings, I believe, scene boxes. Pretty inexpensive for a scene box card. This is 2 and double black for a 3/3 Drake Beast with Flying and with Devour 1, meaning as it enters, we can sacrifice any number of our creatures and it gets a number of 1/1 counters equal to the number of creatures we sacrificed. So it's 1 counter for each creature sacrificed. Usually, when I have tested this deck, I don't even use Devour. Sometimes we might have something, we might have a couple tokens or something we were willing to sacrifice to this, but it'll enter with those counters, so our commander's ability goes on the stack, and if we ate 2 counters, let's say, or 2 tokens, let's say, then we have a 5/5, we can pay 5, and now it's a 10/10 flyer, but as a 3/3 flyer for 4, it's still totally fine for us, because whenever it enters or attacks, target opponent loses an amount of life, and we gain that much life equal to the number of +1/+1 counters on it. So the way this works is, assuming no Devour, because we could do some Devour here, but let's assume we don't, just for simplicity. It comes in, this ability goes on the stack at the same time as our commander's ability. So we let our commander's ability resolve first, we pay 3 life, we put 3 counters on it, and now it's a 6/6. And now, its ability resolves, X is 3, because we have 3 counters on it, and so target opponent will lose X life and will gain X life. Interestingly, X life is the amount we just paid, 3 life, in order to put counters on it. So this is sort of, in a way, for its enters trigger, saying as long as we can front the life, an opponent's going to pay it instead of us. Because we pay it, but we'll get it right back and an opponent will lose it. So yeah, pretty sweet. Then it'll keep doing that every time it attacks. So keep gaining us 3 and causing an opponent to lose 3. And that opponent does not have to be the opponent that the beast is attacking. It could be a different opponent. So yeah, very good if we can put more counters on it, especially with its Devour ability. It just becomes more and more strong. But yeah, lots of fun here. Vincent Valentine from the Final Fantasy set is next. I'm not a Final Fantasy guy, so I don't know what this guy's deal is. Let me know in the comments if the deal is cool. Maybe it is. This is a 2/2 legendary assassin for 2 and double black that says whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, we put a number of 1/1 counters on Vincent Valentine equal to that creature's power. So Vincent is likely going to come in and be a 4/4 anyway, since we'll pay the 4 for it and then pay 2 life to our commander to put 2 counters on him. And then anytime something else dies, if we didn't control it, Vincent's just going to get bigger and scarier. And whenever Vincent Valentine attacks, we may transform it. We don't have to. It's fine if he's just big stats with no abilities, or no keyword abilities like Lifelink or Menace or anything, because he just keeps getting bigger from opponent's creatures dying. That's totally fine. Instead, however, we can have him transform when he attacks into Galian Beast, a 3/2 legendary werewolf beast with trample and lifelink. So if Vincent came in and we just put 2 counters on him with our commander, it costs us 2 life, and now he's a 4/4. When he flips over, he still has those counters. So he's a 5/4 trample lifelink. If he got any other counters before we transformed him using this ability, then those counters still are on him and make him even bigger, and of course, trample and lifelink. The nicest part is, when Galian Beast dies, we return it to the battlefield tapped, front face up. So it'll come back as Vincent Valentine. It comes back, it re-enters combat, or re-enters the battlefield. Our commander will trigger, we'll get to pay 2 more life, and make him a 4/4 again, with this still happening. So we can keep doing Vincent over and over and over, and as long as we are careful about when we choose to transform him with an attack, we'll be able to get plenty of life back from it, and probably get some good damage into our opponents, either with trample being a pseudo-evasion, because our opponent knows, oh, well, if I block with my creature, they're still going to do some damage to me and kill the creature, I'd rather just take the damage. Or, we're killing creatures and hurting our opponents. Both are good. Next, this is our last card that makes blockers for our opponents, but I love this card so much. This is from Throne of Eldraine. I played this in Standard, just such a fun card. This is 3 and double black for an 8/8 troll named Clackbridge Troll. This is the 3 Billy Goats Gruff. That's the fairy tale being told here. This is an 8/8 for 5 with trample and haste. Right? Pretty good already. And when it enters, an opponent creates 3 0/1 white goat creature tokens. So 1 opponent, 3 goats. So a 5 mana 8/8 trample haste, it seems good, but at the beginning of combat on our turn, any opponent may sacrifice a creature of their choice. Any creature, it could even be one of these goats. And if they do, we tap the troll, we gain 3 life, and we draw a card. So we either get to attack with our 8/8 trampler, or if we paid the life for it, our 16/16 trampler, or we get a free revitalize, and an opponent has to sacrifice a creature in the process. Now, they could sacrifice one of these goats. But being able to gain 3 life for free, which is already 37.5% of the amount of life we spent to bump up the troll with our commander, and get a free card out of it that replaces the troll that we just played, that seems good. This happens at the beginning of combat on our turn, And it is still a threat because the troll has haste. If no one chooses to sacrifice a creature, we can attack with our 8/8 or 16/16 right away. What's especially nice about this is these choices are made in turn order. So if our opponent to the left says, I'm not going to sacrifice a creature, and then our opponent to their left says, I'm also not going to sacrifice a creature, then the last opponent, the one to our right, they have to choose to either sack a creature or we get to attack. And we might say to them, look, it's down to you. If you don't sack a creature, I won't attack you. And they'll say, oh, that's a pretty good deal. So you'll hurt one of my opponents for me? And we'll say yes. And they'll say, okay, that sounds great. We could even say to them, say this all to them while this ability is on the stack. We could say, look, I'll make a deal with you. I'll make it easy for you to shut down my troll as long as you just promise not to do it. And then I'll only attack other people. That's pretty sneaky. And we could do lots of fun stuff with that this way. Clackbridge Troll offers an interesting mini game and the ability for us to get more cards and more life, but also, enormous monstrosity. All right. Next up, we're running a black deck, and that's not the only reason to run Gary, but we're also running Gary. This is Grey Merchant of Asphodel, 3 and double black for a 2/4 zombie that says when it enters, each opponent loses X life, where X is our devotion to black, and we gain life equal to the life lost this way. So if X is 2, then each opponent's going to lose 2, and if we have 3 opponents, that means we're going to gain 6. Now, what is devotion? Devotion means you count up the number of black pips in the casting cost of every permanent you control. So for example, if these 8 cards are the permanents we control, then that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Each of these cards is double black. 16 devotion to black. Meaning each opponent's going to lose 16 life, and if we have 3 opponents, we're going to gain 48 life. So Gary's very strong in this deck. As we keep getting more and more things out, we can also make him bigger because all he has is an interest trigger. He's a French vanilla creature. Once that triggers off the stack, he's just there for us. So we spend 2 life since we know we're going to gain at least 2 life. Even if we only have an opponent, just the one opponent, and of course, Madame Null in play, we can spend 2 life to make Gary a 4/6, and then we're going to gain 3 life. 2 for Gary and 1 for Madame Null. Opponent's going to lose 3 life, and then Gary's just a 4/6 beater after that. That seems good. We can sacrifice him, maybe bring him back, maybe have it happen again, but that's just not part of our strategy unless it happens to come up. He's just here to ensure our opponents are drained a little bit, and we are gaining life more than a little bit, and rewards us for building out our board, which is what we want to do anyway. Gwenom Remorseless from the Spider-Man set is next. I was going to build this as a deck. Seems like it's really cool. This is a 4/4 legendary symbiote spider hero for 3 and double black with Death Touch and Lifelink. So 5 mana and 4 life to make an 8/8 Death Touch Lifelink is already good. And whenever Gwenom attacks, until end of turn. That's not right then, it's just we've got the whole rest of the turn to do this. We can look at the top card of our library at any time and play cards from the top of our library. And if we cast a spell this way, we can pay life equal to its mana value rather than its mana cost. Or rather, we have to. We don't get the option to pay for it with mana. So it does say play cards from the top of our library, meaning Gwenom attacks. If we see a land on top of our library and we haven't made a land drop that turn, then once we're in our second main, only at sorcery speed, we can play that land off the top of our library. If beneath that there is a spell, we can cast that spell by paying life rather than mana, because that's what Gwenom lets us do. And assuming she didn't die in the process of this, if she's an 8/8, we just gained 8 life, so we can immediately use that life to pay for whatever we saw on top of our library. Now I know you're thinking, well, but we also paid 4 life to make her into an 8/8. Yeah, but that was last turn. This turn, short-term profits are what we're looking at here. This is a Madame Null deck. So yeah, great card advantage for us with Gwenom. Savanti Romero times Exile. This is another Ninja Turtles card. I have no idea who this is, but it is a demon, and that might be relevant on a later card. So this is a 4/4 legendary demon wizard for 3 and double black and has trample. So we could pay 4 life, and it's a 5 mana 8/8 with trample. Sound familiar? Savanti Romero also says, at the beginning of combat on our turn, we put a +1/+1 counter on Savanti, and then we draw X cards and lose X life, where X is the number of counters on Savanti Romero. So you can choose not to put any counters on this guy when it first comes in with Madame Null. And that's fine. We go to combat, we put a 1 counter on him, we lose 1 life, we draw 1 card. That's fine. Every turn, we'll put another counter on him, we'll lose 1 more life than the last time, and we'll draw 1 more card than the last time. Draw 2, draw 3, lose 2, lose 3, whatever you want to do. That seems totally fine. Or you can play hard. You can say, I cast Savanti Romero. I pay 4 life. I put 4 counters on him. I go to combat. I put another counter on him. He has 5 counters. I lose 5 more life, so I've lost 9 life this turn, but I will also draw 5 cards in the process. Those cards are going to save me more than this life is, because I know next turn he's going to get another counter, and I'm going to lose 6 life and draw 6 cards. That is the no-fear way of playing Savanti Romero in this deck. Totally fine if you want to do it the other way, but also good if you've got plenty of life, and you likely will, or plenty of ways to regain it. Being able to keep your hand overfilled at only the cost of a lot of your life every turn, that seems fun. Next we have the Speed Demon from Ether Drift. This is 3 and double black for a 5/5 legendary demon with flying and trample and start your engines. Start your engines means you gain a speed of 1. You never have a speed until a start your engines permanent has entered the battlefield. When it does, you gain a speed of 1. And then each turn, including the turn that you gain your speed of 1, that your opponents lose life on your turn, your speed will go up. And then max speed is 4. So the idea is the Speed Demon comes in, you start your engines, you get a speed of 1. If we somehow find a way, like attacking, to make any one of our opponents lose life during that turn, or if, they just lose life on their own during our turn, our speed will go to 2. The next one of our turns, it will go to 3, if we can make them lose life, and the last turn, or the turn after that I should say, if they lose life, it will go to 4, and that is now max speed. Max speed is great. We have a couple of other cards in this deck that care about it, but the Speed Demon only cares about what speed it is. What our speed is, rather. Because at the beginning of our end step, we draw on a number of cards and lose the same amount of life based on our speed. So at the very least, this comes in, we go to the end step, we lose a life, we draw a card, helps us out. Much the same way that Savanti Romero does. It does not have Lifelink, but we sure can pay 5 life when it comes in and make a 10/10 Flampler that will cost us 1 more life but draws a card during our end step. Seems good. Metamorphosis Fanatic is next. This is a great source of life gain for us, and just a really fun card from the Duskmourn Commander product. 4 and double black for a 4/4 human cleric with lifelink that says when it enters, we return up to 1 target creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield with a lifelink counter on it. So we don't just get a 4/4 lifelinker for 6, we get a 4/4 lifelinker and a reanimation of anything in our graveyard, and it's going to have lifelink even if it didn't before it came back rather. So Metamorphosis Fanatic is very strong, especially since we can pay 4 life, and of course make it an 8/8 lifelinker, and pay life for the creature it brings back as well, which will of course have lifelink too. But Metamorphosis Fanatic, as you can see from its rad frame, has Miracle. Miracle for 1 and a black, meaning you can cast it from your hand for 4 and double black. But if it was the first card you drew during this turn, you can cast it during your draw step for just its miracle cost. So the idea is you pick it up off the top of your deck and look at it so that everyone can see this is the card you drew this turn. And if it's Metamorphosis Fanatic, you flip it over, you pay your miracle cost, it'll come in right away, have its interest trigger resolve. This is all during your draw step. So we'll be able to do our stuff with our commander as well, and her interest triggers. But that's how Miracle works. This, I guess, is technically not illegal, but people are not going to believe you, and they rightly shouldn't, because it seems like angle shooting. If you were to take this off the top of your library, put it in your hand, shuffle your hand, and then say, okay, I play Metamorphosis Fanatic, but this is the one I drew this turn. So you sort of have to do a little bit of card politics at the table, moving your hand in a specific way to show this is the card you drew. But that's not so bad. Especially if the reward for it is getting 2 creatures into play for 2 mana, one from the graveyard and the Fanatic itself. Yeah, pretty sweet. Next is Necropolis Regent. This is one of our big payoff cards. 3 and triple black rather, for a 6/5 vampire with flying that says whenever a creature we control deals combat damage to a player, we put that many 1/1 counters on it. So if this has no counters on it and it does combat damage to a player, assuming it does 6 damage, it's going to get 6 counters. But if this comes in and we pay 6 life, it's a 12/11 flyer on its own. If we attack and we do 12 damage, now it's a 24/23. Necropolis Regent helps out all of our creatures, and is totally fine to just hold back as a blocker if you want to, because it's going to do its thing no matter what. Pretty good. Scavenged Brawler is interesting. Scavenged Brawler is, I guess we technically have 2 colorless artifact creatures, but we'll talk about the Flesh Gorger in a moment. Scavenged Brawler is 6 generic mana for a 4/4 artifact creature construct that has flying, vigilance, trample, and lifelink. Pretty good. Wish it had haste, but we'll see more about that later on. And then it kind of has a renew ability, similar to our Karsi Revenant. For 5 generic mana and exile it from our graveyard, we choose a creature and we put 4 1/1 counters, a flying counter, a vigilance counter, a trample counter, and a lifelink counter on that creature. So as opposed to the Karsi Revenant that just puts counters based on its abilities, the Brawler also puts 4 1/1 counters on it. So pretty nice. This is only sorcery speed, of course, because it's basically renew. But yeah, we make something enormous after we have our enormous creature attacking. 6 mana for an 8/8 flying vigilance trample lifelink is already great. And then something else that's big, that we've made big with our commander, we make it even bigger and make it a flying vigilant trampling lifelinker. That sounds crazy. We also have Phyrexian Flesh Gorger. 7 generic mana for a 7/5 artifact creature Phyrexian Worm with menace and lifelink and ward, where the controller of the ability or spell targeting it has to pay life equal to this creature's power. So if this comes in for 7 mana and we get our 7/5, we could pay 7 life and make it into a 14/12, and it has ward, pay 14 life. That's crazy. Plus it has menace and lifelink. That sounds really good, and we should try and do that if we can. But you know, if we don't happen to have 7 mana when this is in our hand, we can prototype it. Prototype means instead of paying 7 mana, we pay 1 and double black, and we get exactly this creature, except it is a black creature since it has a black mana cost, and it is a 3/3 instead of a 7/5. So for 1 and double black, we get a 3/3 menace lifelink ward, pay 3 life. But then it comes in and our commander triggers, we pay 3 life for its power, and it becomes a 6/6 menace lifelink ward, pay 6 life. So extremely powerful late game if we can pay 7 mana for it, but very good early game as well, because it's another one of these 3 mana and 3 life creatures that becomes a 6/6 for us. Menace and lifelink, and it protects itself too. Pretty sweet. Next up is Arden the Usurper, another Final Fantasy card. This is 8 mana, 5 and triple black for a 4/4 legendary Elder Human Noble. So 8 mana for an 8/8, we're not really looking to do that. So oftentimes you won't pay to add counters to Arden, unless you're really looking for either a big beater or a really good blocker. If that's the case, that's totally fine. You're able to spend 8 mana, you might as well spend 4 life as well. Now Arden says, demons you control have menace, lifelink, and haste. We've seen a couple of demons. Our Baleful Ammit, we've seen obviously our commander is a demon, so she's already got Death Touch, giving her menace, lifelink, and haste. We're probably not going to attack with her because we'd like her to do her thing instead, but you never know. And then Arden says, Scar Scourge. At the beginning of combat on our turn, we exile up to 1 target creature from a graveyard. That does not say from our graveyard. We find the biggest, scariest thing in any graveyard, and we exile it. And then if we exile a card this way, we make a token that's a copy of that card, except that it's a 5/5 black demon. and demons we control have menace, lifelink, and haste. So at the start of combat, we get a free creature, assuming there was any creature in anyone's graveyard. That creature will be a 5/5 menace, lifelink, haste, plus whatever other text is on it. We don't have to do this because it says exile up to 1. We could choose 0. But Arden is here to be an 8 mana source of making all of our demons better and getting us a scary demon every turn. Notably, it does not say sacrifice this token at the end step. So when this creature token comes in, let's say, an opponent has, I don't know, a Healer's Hawk. No, Healer's Hawk is a silly example. Let's say they've got a Llanowar Elves in their graveyard. Arden exiles the Llanowar Elves. It is a 5/5 black demon with menace, lifelink, and haste, and the ability to tap for a single green, because that's what Llanowar Elves says. It has haste, so we can tap it for green right away. But instead, we want to attack with it. It's got menace and lifelink, and it's got haste, so we can do it right away. We attack with our menace, lifelinking Llanowar Elf. Maybe it doesn't die in the process. Nobody blocks it, nobody removes it. Great. It's just going to stick around. Next turn, we've still got that 5/5 menace, lifelink, haste Llanowar Elves, and maybe we use it to ramp ourselves. We don't need to attack with it because we know we're going to exile something else from a graveyard and make another demon that we can attack with, so we use that Llanowar Elf to make mana for us. Anything we get rid of is going to be really useful to us from the start, but that's only half of it. Because when this demon token is created, it enters the battlefield. And when a creature enters the battlefield, our commander triggers. Meaning, we get that Llanowar Elf exiled, we get a 5/5 black demon Llanowar Elf with menace, lifelink, and haste. Our commander triggers, we spend 5 life, put 5 counters on it. Now it's a 10/10 menace, lifelink, haste. We attack with it right away, get our 5 back, and gain 5 more on top of it. Assuming it's not removed before that, we're doing great. And then, next turn, we do it all over again. Pay 5 life, gain 10 life right after from attacking with whatever we had attacked with, as well as probably that first 10/10. So Arden is expensive, but we don't have to make him big unless we want to, and we have enough life to throw around. And this is going to happen that same turn, assuming we have Arden enter the battlefield pre-combat, and assuming there's some creature card in anyone's graveyard. So yeah, this can really work well for us. A little bit risky, put all of our mana into it, but very strong payoff when it does. Next we have a Room. This is from Duskmourn. This is a Room enchantment. The way these work is this is, in our hand, a split card. We can cast either side, Unholy Annex or Ritual Chamber. Let's say we cast the Annex. When we do, on the stack, it is this half of the card. It is a black spell for 2 and a black. That is an enchantment, Room. It'll enter the battlefield, and this side, which is called a door, will be unlocked. This side will be locked. That means while it's in play, we treat it like it only has the characteristics of this side, which is 2 and a black for an enchantment that says at the beginning of our end step, we draw a card. Bonus card. And if we control a demon, each opponent loses 2 life and we gain 2 life, otherwise we lose 2 life. Our commander's a demon, so most of the time when we're playing this, we're not going to lose life, our opponents will, and we'll gain it. Then, at sorcery speed, we can unlock the other door. When we do, it gains all the characteristics of the other side as well. Ritual Chamber is 5 mana, 3 and double black, and it says when we unlock it, we make a 6/6 black demon creature token with flying. Now, in this deck, there's no way to relock this, so this is just a one-shot thing. But it's pretty nice. If our commander and none of our other demons are in play, we can make this black demon, and it will check and see if we have a demon with the Annex, and we'll be able to draw our card and gain life, and our opponents lose life, rather than us losing life. So this helps us either way. If we play the Chamber first, that's pretty good. We get a 6/6 demon token with flying, which lets us then, with our commander, pay 6 life and make it a 12/12 demon token with flying. Yeah, so very nice either way. In this deck, Unholy Annex is totally fine to play on its own. You never need to make this demon. But if you've got the mana at some point, you might as well. It's only going to help you. But being able to gain life, drain your opponents, and draw cards from the annex simply by having your commander in play is pretty good. So yeah. Finally, in this, and I should mention, this is in the Brutes section because it makes a 6/6 flying demon. That's a pretty good brute. Finally, in this section, one of our most expensive cards in the deck at $8.50. It's Vilis, Broker of Blood. This is another 5 and triple black rather for an 8/8 legendary flying demon. So already, this is another situation where we can pay 8 life and make it a 16/16 flyer for 8 mana. That's pretty scary. We can also pay a black and 2 life to give a creature -1/-1 until end of turn. So we do that a couple of times, and we can kill a creature that's, we pay triple black and 6 life, activating this 3 times. We can kill an X3. It's just dead. Or we make what looks like a profitable block into a disprofitable block, a trade or something like that. We don't even have to do this when it comes to creatures that we're attacking or that we're blocking. We could jump into an opponent's battle. Maybe opponent A is attacking opponent B, and opponent B says, haha, I cast this spell to pump up my commander by 1, and so now what would have been a trade, I'm actually winning. We could say, okay, well, we're going to pay a black and 2 life to give your commander -1/-1, negating that pump up. And now there is a trade. And so 2 people have lost creatures rather than 1. They were both our opponents, so that's what we want. We want to see we want to see our opponents lose their resources so we can use our resources to win. But why is Vilis in this deck? Well, because whenever we lose life, we draw that many cards. That's extremely powerful. That's why Vilis is so expensive. So anytime we have, a 3/2 creature enter under our control, we pay 3 life, not to our commander's ability to put 3 counters on it. That's also going to draw us 3 cards. When Vilis gets activated here, we pay 2 life to give a creature -1/-1 until end of turn. We're going to draw 2 cards from that. When Vilis enters the battlefield, if our commander's in play and triggers and we choose to pay 8 life to make Vilis into a 16/16, we will also draw 8 cards. Just completely refill our hand. Vilis is an amazing draw engine with our commander and a great source of removal. And even if it doesn't remove a creature, we can just make something 1 smaller for a turn in order to pay 2 life and a black mana to draw a card. Or draw 2 cards rather. A single mana and 2 life to draw 2 cards is a crazy rate, and we get something on top of that. This is so strong. Plus, nothing wrong with a 16/16 flyer. Yeah. So that is our Brutes section. We're going to see a lot of these cards in other sections as well, but that's the big thing we're doing with our deck. We're just trying to swing in and hurt our opponents. The way we keep from dying to our own commander's effect is our Lifelink section. So I'm just going to mention this section. I've tagged every card in our deck that has Lifelink, which is 18 of them. And we've seen all of these because these are all beaters, with one exception, Elegy Acolyte. We'll talk about that right now, I suppose. Elegy Acolyte is 2 and double black for a 4/4 human cleric with lifelink. So we sure can pay 4 life when this comes in to make it an 8/8 lifelink. That's totally fine. I didn't put it in the beaters or in the brutes section because its ability is so good outside of that. So we don't always necessarily want to risk this in combat. That ability is whenever 1 or more creatures we control deal combat damage to a player, we draw a card and lose a life. So we're getting plenty of life back to counteract this, and drawing a card for a single life is already very good. This does say 1 or more creatures. So if we have 3 of our creatures do damage to an opponent, we're only drawing a single card. But if those 3 creatures each deal damage to a different player, then this will trigger 3 times, once for each player that's gotten damage dealt to by 1 or more creatures, and we'll draw 3 cards and lose 3 life total. Pretty good. In addition, we can't pretend that our stuff is not going to get removed or blocked and killed in combat. That's what happens when you have a combat-based deck. So Elegy Acolyte says at the beginning of our end step, if a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn or a spell was warped this turn, that's not going to come up for us. We don't have any warp cards. But this certainly will during our end step. Then we make a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token. Nice to have a little robot. if that happens, we've gotten a free 2/2 that we can pay 2 life into to make a 4/4 right away. Pretty good. Elegy Acolyte can be a brute, but because of this ability and this ability, I said this is probably better as a solid blocker. Maybe we don't even want to pay the life for this. But it does have lifelink, so it would be a pretty good attacker as well, or especially a blocker as an 8/8 lifelinker. So yeah, there's that. But we've seen all these cards in our lifelink section, and we'll talk more about cards that are in multiple sections when we're not just noting, hey, this has lifelink, this has lifelink, this has lifelink. What we have is a Lifegain section. I'm going to talk about these. We've seen a lot of these, but we'll look at the ones we haven't. So Consuming Corruption, since these cards are cards that gain us life in ways other than simply through lifelink. Consuming Corruption is double black for an instant that deals X damage to a creature or planeswalker, and we gain X life, where X is the number of swamps we control. We have a couple of effects like this, or maybe 2, I think. The likelihood that we're going to be doing more than a few damage with this is not super high, because as we get more and more swamps into play, we're playing more and more big things. But we're running 28 swamps in this deck, 28 basic swamps, plus 1 non-basic swamp. So 29 cards in our deck make this bigger and bigger. So this is a great way to remove a creature or a planeswalker, and of course, gain us life in the process. Demon's Horn is a weird inclusion in this deck, but it works just so well for us. Since all but one of our spells, that's not true, since so many of our spells, the vast majority of our spells are black, and since other people play black in Commander, Demon's Horn is just going to be a great way to mitigate the life that we're spending on our Commander, even though we don't always have to. So for 2 generic mana, we get an artifact that just says whenever a player casts a black spell, we can gain a life. So 2 mana as a way to always get a little bit of a rebate on our black creatures or our other black spells, rebate in terms of life. That seems pretty good. We've seen Morlun. Morlun deals damage to an opponent when he enters based on the number of counters on him, but because he has lifelink, that is not just combat damage that we're gaining life off of with the lifelink, it's direct damage to an opponent. That's why he's in this section. Archenemy's Charm is next from Edge of Eternities. Triple black for an instant that says either exile target creature or planeswalker, return 1 or 2 creatures and or planeswalkers cards from our graveyard to our hand, or put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature we control, and it gains lifelink until end of turn. In decks like this, I normally wouldn't just tag every creature that has lifelink, or that gains us life that way. I would specifically do it for cards that grant the ability for us to gain life off of them. And so that's why Archenemy's Charm is here. It grants lifelink. So it's not just, it wouldn't be a lifelink card because it's not a creature that inherently has it. This is just a way to get it. It's also a removal spell, a recursion spell, and a pump spell. Pretty good. Whatever we need. Bontu's Monument, the Bontument. I love this card so much. I've played so much with this. This is 3 generic mana for a legendary artifact that makes all of our black creature spells cost 1 less to cast. You will note we have 42 spells in this deck. 2 of them are artifacts. One of those 2 is colorless. The other one can be. The Phyrexian Fleshgorger can be a black creature spell. Or it might not be. But in any case, that means we have at least 40 or 41 cards in our deck that are or can be black creature spells, including our commander. So all of those get discounted by 1. Not all of them can take advantage of it. Some of them are just, they don't have any generic pips in their cost, but still very nice for us to be able to get those discounts. In addition, whenever we cast a creature spell, does not have to be a black creature spell. Each opponent loses a life and we gain a life. So a little bit of chip damage to our opponents, a little bit of life gain for us, and a big discount. I don't typically run discount effects in my decks unless they can affect about 40 cards. 40 cards can take advantage of that discount. Bontu's Monument, right there on the bubble. So yeah, very strong. We've seen the Gumdrop Poisoner. The Gumdrop Poisoner is here because of her Tempt with Treats adventure. It lets us make a food, which we can, independent of the Poisoner and her lifelink, gain life from. Obviously, Bontu's Monument gains us life when we cast creature spells. Mask of Grizzlebrand is next. This card is just a good time. 1 and double black for a legendary equipment that equips for 3, so we're paying 6 mana to get this on something, But whatever we put it on has flying and lifelink, and when that thing dies, we can pay life equal to its power to draw that many cards. So a great way, even if we never use this, which we probably will because it's a very strong way to draw cards, to make one of our huge things that is, maybe it already has Menace or already has Trample, giving it flying and lifelink as well, that can just be a huge life swing for us. Karsi Revenant, of course, can put a flying counter, a death touch counter, and a lifelink counter on a creature, so giving something that doesn't have lifelink permanently, as opposed to temporarily in the way we would with the Archenemy's Charm. Next we have Veto, Thorn of the Dusk Rose, another expensive card in our deck, but I think we kept our budget pretty low. $100 is, I like to go lower than that, I'm willing to go higher, but I think that's pretty good for as much fun as this deck is. Veto is 2 and a black for a 1/3 legendary vampire cleric that says whenever we gain life, target opponent loses that much life. So our gain is their loss every time, no matter how much life it is. It's not just one of these things like a Marauding Blight Priest, where if we gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. This is target opponent, but this is just as much life as we lost. And we can pay 3 and double black and give all of our creatures lifelink until end of turn. All of our huge things, if it didn't have lifelink, until end of turn it does, and that will, of course, trigger Veto's other ability. Next, another Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles card, but this is from the Commander deck. This is Dimension X Pizzasaur, 3 and a black for a 2/1 artifact creature food alien mutant. Woof. When it enters, we put 2 1/1 counters on target creature. Does not have to be the Pizzasaur. And then when we do, we destroy up to 1 target creature with mana value less than or equal to the number of counters among permanents you control. So we don't really need the Pizzasaur to be big. It can be. We can put 2 counters on it. We can put 2 counters on a creature we don't control, but that's not what we're going to do. We're going to make our creatures huge, even our commander. And we just get to have a removal effect on that. This is an interest trigger, so we can stack this to happen after our commander's interest trigger resolves. So maybe our commander sees the Pizzasaur come in, we pay 2 life to put 2 counters on it, making it a 4/3. Then we put 2 counters on a creature with the Pizzasaur. Maybe we put them on the Pizzasaur for simplicity's sake. Now it's a 6/5. We have at least 4 counters, because we just put those 4 counters all on the Pizzasaur among permanents we control. So we're going to be able to destroy a creature, mana value 4 or less, with the Pizzasaur, the rest of its, with its reflexive trigger here. So yeah, hopefully we can destroy something even bigger because we're going to have a lot more counters. But the Pizzasaur doesn't have to be the recipient of its own counters, but it can be. And if it is, then we paid 4 mana for a 4/3. If we let that resolve first, which is fine, because 2 counters is totally fine for us to try and blow something up from, we could then pay the 4 life to our commander and make this an 8/7 for 4 that killed something. And that has an interesting version of the food effect to it, which is pay 2, tap, and sack it, and we gain 3 life, and each opponent loses 3 life. A bonus little bit of drain there. Pretty good. But this is in this section because we can gain that life. And interestingly, I think that the Pizzasaur should be a beater. It should be a brute. Yeah, let's put it in the brute section. I don't think I put it in the brute section because I looked at it more as a removal spell, but it sure is one after the fact. And I guess especially because I think I didn't put it in that section because of this. So we might want to just have it sticking around so that we can just drain everyone. But what's better than draining someone is attacking with an 8/7. Next we have Dread Presence. Dread Presence is 3 and a black for a 3/3 nightmare that says whenever a swamp we control enters, so that's a basic swamp or a non-basic swamp, we choose to either draw a card and lose a life, or have the Dread Presence do 2 damage to any target and we can gain 2 life. That's any target. That's creatures. That's planeswalkers. That's our opponents. And we gain life from it as well. And that can fuel the life that we're losing whenever we draw cards. Oftentimes, with the amount of card draw in this deck, this is every turn, because we're playing a swamp every turn for our land drop. Not always, we have non-basic cards, but it's going to be often enough. And nothing wrong with having the Dread Presence become a 6/6 for only 3 life, thanks to our commander. Totally okay. We've seen the Fell Beast. The Fell Beast lets us gain life and causes an opponent to lose life whenever it enters or attacks based on the number of counters on it. So that's not Lifelink, that's just a nice triggered ability. Next, Twilight Prophet. Love this card. Incredible new art as well. 2 and double black for a 2/4 vampire cleric with a flying and ascend. Ascend means if at any time Twilight Prophet is in play and we have 10 or more permanents, we suddenly get the City's Blessing, and we have it for the rest of the game. It doesn't matter if we lose permanents, doesn't matter if the Twilight Prophet leaves, we'll have the City's Blessing for the rest of the game no matter what. And only cards that have the Ascend keyword care about it, and I think Twilight Prophet is our only one, but nice to know. It says, at the beginning of our upkeep, if we have the City's Blessing, we reveal the top card of our library and put it in our hand. Each opponent loses life equal to that card's mana value, and we gain that much life. So, sweet. We get a free extra draw every turn during our upkeep. Everyone's going to lose life, assuming we drew something that wasn't a land, something with a mana value greater than 0, and we'll gain life as well. Good way to gain life, good way to drain our opponents, and, puts more cards in our hand. Clackbridge Troll, probably our opponents are not going to want us to attack with our hasty, trampling 8/8 or 16/16 Troll, so they will sacrifice a creature, we'll gain 3 life, and we'll draw a card. Gary lets us drain each opponent equal to our devotion to black when it comes in, and we gain life equal to that total amount that was lost. Tenured Inkcaster is next. This is 4 and a black from Strixhaven. This is a 2/2 Vampire Warlock, so not a terrific rate. Even if we pay 2 life, this is a 4/4 for 5. It's low for our normal rate in this deck. But when it enters, we can put a 1/1 counter on a creature, which could be it, which means it could be a 6/6 for 5, I suppose, if we pay 3 life. But it also says whenever a creature we control with a +1/+1 counter on it attacks, each opponent loses a life and we gain a life. So if we attack with 5 creatures, we're gaining 5 life, and each opponent, not just the ones that are being attacked, loses 5. That seems pretty good. Just a nice little synergy with the rest of our cards. Metamorphosis Fanatic puts a lifelink counter on the creature that it reanimates. Scavenged Brawler puts a lifelink counter on the creature that it targets. Arden Usurper gives lifelink to our demons, which includes the demon tokens that he makes. And of course, Unholy Annex. If we control a demon at the beginning of our end step, when we draw a card with it, we will gain 2 and each opponent will lose 2. And if that's relevant to us, especially because our commander is a demon. And that covers our life gain section. We've seen a little bit of our drain section, but we're just going to go through it real quick as part of the biggest part of our game plan. There you go. So Morloon does damage to an opponent when he enters based on the number of counters on him. That's good drain. Bantu's Monument causes each opponent to lose a life and we gain a life whenever we cast a creature spell. Hunted Bone Brute dies and each opponent loses 3 life. Veto causes all of our opponents to lose life equal to the amount we gain every time we gain life. Dimension X Peachosaur, if we crack it, paying 2, tapping and sacking it, we gain 3 and each opponent loses 3. Dread Presence, we have a swamp come in and we can choose to gain 2 life and have it do 2 damage to a target. It's not drain, it's actually burn because it's damage, not life loss, but which is the same thing as Morloon, but it's in this section for simplicity. Fellbeast enters or attacks, and an opponent will lose an amount of life equal to the number of counters on it, and we gain that life. Twilight Prophet, at the start of our upkeep, lets us reveal the top card of our library, and each opponent loses life equal to its mana value. We gain that much, and we put the card in our hand. Gary has each opponent lose life equal to our devotion to black, and we gain that total amount of life when it enters. Tenured Inkcaster drains each opponent for 1, and we gain that life each time we attack with a creature with 1/1 counters on it. Massacre Worm we haven't seen yet. This is one of our wraths. 3 and triple black, for a 6/5 Phyrexian Worm that when it enters, creatures our opponents control get -2/-2 until end of turn. This can just kill an opponent's board. If they don't have anything with more than 2 toughness, everything's gone. Otherwise, maybe this is post-combat, and they have some creatures that have damage marked on them, and the -2/-2 is enough to kill them. Or maybe we play this pre-combat, get rid of all the X2s, or smaller, and then we attack, and they know all their stuff is weaker and smaller and more likely to die, so they just choose to take the damage. So it might be a little bit of pseudo-evasion for us. Virtual Evasion. And whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, that player loses 2 life. It does not have to die from something we control, from one of our creatures attacking, from this -2/-2 that the worm gives them, from any direct damage or kill spell that we cast. It could die as a part of them sacrificing it, as a part of them attacking or blocking a different opponent. Whatever it may be, as long as it's a creature and an opponent controls it and it died, that player's going to lose 2 life. Massacre Worm is great for the drain. Defiant Bloodlord is next. This is another one of our big flyers, but it does a lot for us. 5 and double black for a 4/5 vampire with flying that says whenever we gain life, target opponent loses that much life. Recognize that effect from Veto. Whenever we gain life, target opponent loses that much life. Just a nice way to do it. Veto gives us the ability to gain that life by giving our creatures lifelink. Defiant Bloodlord is just a 4/5 flyer. But a 4/5 flyer is pretty sweet if we're able to pay 4 life when it comes in and make it an 8/9 flyer. So yeah, pretty good. Not a beater because we want to use its effect, similar to the way we're using Veto's effect and Twilight Prophet's effect. But yeah, a brute, I should say. But of course, any of our creatures in our deck can be a brute if you try hard enough with it. And finally, Unholy Annex can drain our opponents for 2, and we gain 2 if at the end step when we draw a card, we control a demon. So that is our drain section, and that is pretty much our game plan. We have a number of cards that supplement our game plan, but before we get into them, let's go over these categories of support here. We're going to start with our card advantage section, which as usual I've tagged as draw, just as a shorthand. It doesn't mean all these cards draw us cards, like the draw action. It just means it gives us access to more cards that we can play. For example, Ayara's Oathsworn, once it does combat damage to a player with exactly 4 1/1 counters on it, it lets us Demonic Tutor. We search our library for a card, put it in our hand, and shuffle. We didn't draw that card, but we have access to it, so it's card advantage. Deadly Dispute, not exactly card advantage, but it's close enough for our purposes. This is 1 and a black for an instant with an additional cost to sacrifice an artifact or creature. We don't have to sacrifice a creature, it can be an artifact. Then we draw 2 cards and we make a treasure. Pretty good. A little bit of acceleration in the treasure, a little bit of card draw in the form of drawing the cards. Pretty good, and I really like this art. Look at that cute smile. Next we have Mind Stone. This is really more of an acceleration piece, but we can use it to draw a card. For 2 generic mana, we get an artifact that taps for colorless mana, so it's a mana rock. But we can also cash it in when we no longer need it, or if we are just desperate for a card, by paying 1, tapping, and sacrificing it, and we get to draw a card from it. Pretty good. Mask of Grizzlebrand, when the equipped creature dies, if we pay life equal to its power, we draw that many cards. Pretty good. Dread Presence, when we have a Swamp Enter, we can draw a card and lose a life. Elegy Acolyte lets us lose a life and draw a card when we have 1 or more creatures deal combat damage to a player. Shadowheart, Dark Justiciar, good grief. What a day for me to record a video. Is a 3/4 legendary human elf cleric for 3 and a black. Shadowheart says we can pay 1 and a black, tap, and sacrifice another creature to draw X cards, where X is that creature's power, and has choose a background, which is not relevant for this deck. So being able to have Shadowheart turn one of our creatures into a whole bunch of cards, because some of our creatures, after we put the counters on them, are enormous, just holding back Shadowheart, who maybe we've made into a 6/7 rather, when she came in. That's a possibility. Just to make her a good blocker. We just hold her up and 2 mana, so that if someone tries to remove one of our creatures, we respond by sacrificing that creature and drawing a whole bunch of cards. That seems pretty good. Twilight Prophet puts an extra card in our hand during our upkeep and gains us some life based on its mana value and causes each opponent to lose that much life as well. Pretty good advantage there. Clackbridge Troll, if someone sacrifices a creature at the start of our combat, the troll gets tapped down, but we gain 3 life and we draw a card. Gwenum gives us the ability to play cards off the top of our library, including lands or casting spells by paying life equal to their mana cost rather than their mana cost. Life equal to their mana value rather than their mana cost. So that's access to more cards. Pretty good. Savanti Romero gives us a lot of extra cards, especially if we put a bunch of counters on him when he comes in with our commander's ability. Speed Demon similarly gives us cards equal to our speed at our end step, and we lose that much life. Unholy Annex gives us an extra card at our end step, and Villas lets us draw cards equal to the amount of life we lose every time we lose life. So we have at least a couple of very powerful card advantage engines in this deck. That is our card advantage section. Let's talk now about our acceleration, which as usual I've just shorthanded as ramp. We're running Soul Ring, of course we are. It's a single generic mana for a rock that taps for 2 colorless mana. This is extremely powerful, especially when we have a few creatures and spells in this deck that are 7 mana value or more. So yeah, you want to run Soul Ring, it gets things out faster. Wayfarer's Bauble is also great in this deck. A single generic mana for an artifact that if you pay 2 tap and sack it, you get to Rampant Growth. Search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. In this deck, of course, we find a basic swamp, and this is just great to have in our opening hand. Maybe we have 2 basic swamps in our hand, we play one on turn 1 and the Wayfarer's Bauble. Next turn, we play another one, we crack the bauble, and now we're going into turn 3 with 3 lands already in play. So if we miss our land drop on turn 3, that's alright, we can still cast our commander turn 3, which is what we want to do anyway. Arcane Signet, also important. This is a 2 mana rock that comes in untapped and taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. So black. This is great. A 2 mana untapped rock that makes colored mana, that's exactly what we want. We would do this if it came in tapped. Oh look, we are. It's Charcoal Diamond. 2 generic for an artifact that comes in tapped and taps for black. Yeah, we wish it was untapped, but it does make a colored mana, and that's good for us. We've seen Deadly Dispute, it makes a treasure. Felwar Stone is an untapped 2 mana rock that makes 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. That's fine. If none of our opponents are running black, then this just makes, essentially, mana that we can only use for generic costs. And that's fine. It's an untapped rock that makes mana that it might as well be colorless for us. That's already worth running. You could replace this, if you want, with a Thought Vessel. Thought Vessel makes colorless mana, but also gives us no hand limit, which is not really that important in this deck. But if you care about drawing a whole bunch of cards, then maybe that's fine. It's just a little more expensive than the Felwar Stone, and Felwar Stone might make colored mana that we can use if an opponent's playing lands that can make black. They don't even have to be in black. They just have to run an Exotic Orchard, which makes mana equal to, or mana of any type that the lands an opponent controls could produce. So their Exotic Orchard sees our basic swamps, and our Felwar Stone sees their Exotic Orchard, so it makes black. Or if someone has a land that taps for 1 mana of any color, or if they have a Chromatic Lantern that gives their lands that ability, and so forth. Felwar Stone can be like an Arcane Signet for us. So yeah. We've seen the Mind Stone, taps for colorless, or we can crack it for a card. Fane the Broker is next. I was so excited when I found this guy. I've been wanting to put him in a deck forever. This is 2 and a black for a 3/3 legendary human warlock with 4 abilities. We can tap and sacrifice a creature to put 2 1/1 counters on a creature. That seems good. It doesn't have to be a creature we control, but it's a good way for us to use our creatures, like we've said earlier regarding Shadowheart. Like if someone is going to get rid of one of our creatures anyway, we might as well crack it for value and put counters on something else. Or we could tap Fane and remove a counter from a creature we control to make a treasure token. That's why Fane is in our section for acceleration. We want to be able to say, I cast a creature. I pay life to put counters on that creature. I use Fane to remove those counters to make them into treasures. So I have turned my life into my mana via Fane. Yeah, it's slow, but it works great, and it's a good thing for us to use every turn, even if it's just we wait till the end step of our opponent to the right to activate Fane, and we get to use something. We get to sack a creature to put counters on something, take one of our counters off, make a treasure token, that's good too, or we can tap Fane and sacrifice an artifact to make a 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token with flying. Just a 2/1 flyer is pretty good. If we made a treasure from one of our counters from one of our creatures, using Fane's middle ability, or second ability, we can then sacrifice that treasure, make a 2/1 flyer, pay 2 life into our commander, and now it's a 4/3 flyer that we didn't spend any mana on. That's pretty great. or we spent 1 mana on if you want to consider that treasure token mana. But which is, of course, why Feign is in this acceleration section. Finally, if we've got mana sitting around, we can pay 3 and a black to untap Feign and do this all over again. Pretty cool. Next, we have Heraldic Banner, originally from Throne of Eldraine. 3 generic mana for an artifact that as it enters, we choose a color. We will choose black. Creatures we control of the chosen color get +1/+0, and we can tap it to add 1 mana of the chosen color. So this is like a manolith for us. It taps for black. That seems good. But it also makes our creatures a little bit bigger, and that's affecting them all the time they're on the battlefield, which means it's already affecting them when our commander has her ability trigger and resolve. So for example, if Heraldic Banner is in play, and we have our commander in play and we cast Feign, let's say, Feign will enter and immediately just be a 4/3 because of the +1/+0. So that we can spend 4 mana with our commander, or 4 life to our commander, that is, to put 4 counters on Feign, making Feign into an 8/7 with Heraldic Banner. That seems pretty good. And then if we lose our Heraldic Banner, then Feign would become a 7/7. That seems fine. Yeah, so the banner makes all of our creatures bigger, which does let us spend more life, or force us, I guess, to spend more life to pump up our creatures, thus making them huger and giving us more out of it. And it taps for black. Finally, we have Nyx Lotus. This is 4 generic mana for a legendary artifact that comes in tapped. And if we could tap it, we choose a color. We will choose black, and we add an amount of mana equal to our devotion to that color of that color. So if our devotion to black is 4, we tap it for 4, and we get 4 black. Great. It cost us 4, but it's only going to get better as we get more and more creatures and other permanents into play that are themselves black, of course. So there are ways to have a stronger, like more powerful, more like low-cost acceleration section, but I have found that they haven't been that necessary in my testing of this deck. But you could definitely go with something cheaper than Nyx Lotus and something smaller than Heraldic Banner if you wanted to add more 2-mana rocks. If you got the mana for it or the money for it, you could buy a Soul Stone, put that in here. It would be great in this deck. So yeah, that is our acceleration section. But we have a little addendum to it, which is our discounts section. We've got 2 cards that help us cast our spells by making them cheaper. We've already seen Bontu's Monument, which makes all of our black creature spells cost 1 less, or 1 generic less, which is most of our black creatures. But we also have Heartless Summoning, and this is what I was talking about when I talked about creatures that have a printed toughness of 1. Heartless Summoning is 1 and a black for an enchantment that makes all of our creature spells cost 2 less to cast, meaning our commander only costs a single black. But it gives our creatures a continuous -1/-1. This is happening all the time. So if we have a creature enter as enter and it's printed as a 2/2, our commander will see it come in as a 1/1 because it will be a 1/1. She will trigger and will only be able to spend 1 life to put 1 counter on that creature to bring it back up to a 2/2 essentially. So this does sort of work against some of what we're doing, making our big things bigger. But it makes everything so much cheaper. We have so many expensive spells, it's just worth it for us. In addition, if we have something like our Null Priest of Oblivion, let's say. Null Priest is a good example here. For 1 and a black, we get a 2/1, meaning with Heartless Summoning in, it only costs a single black, and it will be a 1/0, meaning it will die immediately. We don't have the opportunity to pay into our commander and put counters on it, because by that time our commander ability goes on the stack, Null Priest of Oblivion will be removed, will die from state-based actions with a toughness of 0. That's too bad. However, if Null Priest of Oblivion is kicked, we're paying 4 and double black, reduced by Heartless Summoning to 2 and double black. Null Priest of Oblivion will enter the battlefield and will die immediately, but it will still enter, meaning it will still return a creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield. So this is, even with Heartless Summoning out, Null Priest of Oblivion becomes a 4-mana reanimation spell. That's not terrible, that's Zombify. Similarly, we've got Morlun, which again is the only other creature in our deck that it has a toughness of 1, but Morlun enters with 1/1 counters on him if we pay into the X. Meaning, all we have to do is make X equal 1 with Heartless Summoning, and Morlun will come in with a 1/1 counter on him, which will negate the -1 from Heartless Summoning, and he'll be a 2/1. But why would we do that when Heartless Summoning reduces the cost of our creatures by 2 generic mana? That means Morlun, we can pay nothing into the X and still declare X as 2. Because that means X is 2, so we're paying 2 generic and double black, minus the 2 generic from Heartless Summoning, so we're only paying double black. Morlun comes in with 2 counters, and therefore comes in as a 3/2. I would say 4/3, but he's getting -1/-1 from Heartless Summoning. However, X was still 2, so he'll still come in with 2 counters and do that 2 damage to target opponent. So even with Heartless Summoning, we are getting a lot of value from all of our creatures. Our commander is a 0/2 with Heartless Summoning in play, and that's totally fine. So this is just an extremely powerful bit of acceleration for us for only 2 mana. It does mean we have to play a little bit differently, but we're already doing that in a few ways, like with our cards that enter with counters on them, thus changing their power when our commander's ability resolves. So yeah, Heartless Summoning could really help us out. That covers the discount section to go along with our acceleration. Let's talk now about our interaction. That's, again, just shorthanded as removal. So we've seen Consuming Corruption, double black for an instant that does an amount of damage equal to the number of swamps we control to a creature or planeswalker, and we gain that much life. Defile is kind of similar. It's a single black for an instant that gives a creature -1/-1 until end of turn for each swamp we control. So we're not gaining any life off of this, and we can't hit planeswalkers, which wouldn't make sense anyway because it's power and toughness penalty. But this can kill, of course, indestructible creatures if we make their life total or their toughness 0 or less. Pretty good. It is tied to the number of swamps we control, just like our Consuming Corruption, but instant speed, inexpensive, very strong. Font of Agonies is amazing in this deck. This is a single black for an enchantment that says whenever you pay life, put that many blood counters on this enchantment. Blood counters don't have an inherent mechanical meaning. They're just used by this enchantment. And pay 1 and a black and remove 4 blood counters from Font of Agonies and destroy target creature. So every time we pay life, we're getting counters on this. Eventually, this is going to have so many counters that it essentially says you have a consistent 1 and a black to destroy a creature effect. This is at instant speed as well. Just repeatable removal. As long as we are paying life, that's amazing. Cost us a single mana. Crazy good. Feed the Swarm is next. This is a mono black deck, and this is my favorite of the now 3 options that we have for black to deal with enchantments. So for 1 and a black, we get a sorcery that destroys a target creature or enchantment that an opponent controls. We then lose life equal to that permanent's mana value. Losing life isn't so bad. We have lots of ways to get it back, and that's sort of a big part of our deck. We have some ways to even be rewarded for it, like with Villas. That will not trigger Font of Agonies, because Font of Agonies cares about us paying life, not just losing it. But yeah, Feed the Swarm is the way I like to remove enchantments. Let me know in the comments if you have a preference for a different one of these black cards that can get rid of enchantments. Archenemy's Charm, one of its modes is exile a creature or planeswalker. Seems good. Gumdrop Poisoner enters and gives a creature -X/-X equal to the amount of life we gained this turn until end of turn. Murderous Rider has Swift End, the instant speed adventure to destroy a creature or planeswalker, and then we lose 2 life. Dimension X Pizzasaur, when it enters, we put 2 counters on a creature, and then we count up the number of counters among our permanents, and we destroy a creature with mana value less than or equal to that number. Dread Presence can do 2 damage to any target whenever a swamp enters, and we gain 2 life, so that could just kill something. Eradicator Valkyrie lets us boast and sacrifice a creature to make each opponent sacrifice a creature. And Villas, if we pay a black and 2 life, thereby drawing 2 cards, we can give a creature -1/-1 until end of turn. We just keep doing that until something's dead. Seems good. That is our interaction section. We are running 2 Wraths in the deck. We've seen Massacre Worm, gives all of our opponent's creatures -2/-2 until end of turn. May not kill everything, but it's a good possibility, and it does drain our opponents whenever they lose their creatures, whenever their creatures die, that is. We're also running 0-point Ballad. There were a bunch of good options for Wraths in this deck, but this is the one I chose. X and a black for a sorcery that destroys all creatures with toughness X or less. We then lose that much life, X life. But if X is 6 or more, we return a creature card put into a graveyard this way to the battlefield under our control. So we have so many creatures that get pumped up by our commander that it's possible we can 0-point Ballad to kill off most or all of our opponent's creatures without losing any, or especially many, of our own creatures. That's likely to kill our commander, however, since she only has a toughness of 3. But if we are able to keep a few of our creatures when X is 6 or more, well, we just have 0-point Ballad return our commander to play. So we lost some life in the process of this, but we killed everything we needed to, assuming we could pay mana and life for it, and we got something back. However, it doesn't have to be our commander. It doesn't even have to be something that we control. As long as it was put into a graveyard by 0-point Ballad, we can get one of our opponent's creatures if we'd rather do that. It's a good possibility. Those are our Wraths. I mentioned we have a few sections of supplemental cards for this game plan. Let's talk about them now. Our Payoffs section is here. These are cards that reward us for doing what we were going to do anyway, and we've seen all of these. Font of Agonies gives us blood counters when we pay life, and we can use that to kill things. Feign lets us put counters on our creatures, which we can remove to make treasures, or do these other fun things. Gumdrop Poisoner can hurt something can give a penalty to power and toughness to a creature until end of turn based on the amount of life we've gained this turn. We're going to be gaining a lot of life. Speaking of gaining life, Veto and Defiant Bloodlord both cause a target opponent to lose as much life as we gain every time we gain the life. Fell Beast of Mordor is going to cares about the number of counters on it. We're going to be putting counters on it. And it's going to be gaining us life and causing an opponent to lose life whenever it enters attacks with those. Tenured Inkcaster, of course, we're attacking with our creatures that have counters on them, so every time we do, each opponent will lose 1 and we gain a life. The Speed Demon cares about us doing damage to our opponents, both draining them, or not damage, but causing our opponents to lose life, I should say, which is the start your engines and speed mechanic. So Speed Demon pays us off with that by making us lose a little bit more life as well, but also giving us card draw during our end step thanks to our speed. And of course, Vilis is the best example of this, drawing us cards every time we lose life for any reason. Very cool. That's our payoff section. Our commander's not the only one that can pump things up, though. Here's our pump section. We've seen all of these as well. Archenemy's Charm can put 2/1/1 counters on a creature we control and give it lifelink until end of turn. Drana gives all of our attacking creatures a counter whenever she does common damage to a player. Feign can put 2 counters on one of our creatures if we tap him and sacrifice a creature. Heraldic Banner makes all of our black creatures, assuming we choose black, and we ought to, +1/+1. Dimension X Pizza Sword puts 2/1/1 counters on a creature when it enters. Tenured Inkcaster puts 1 counter on a creature when it enters. The Necropolis Regent lets us put counters on any of our creatures that do combat damage to a player, based on the amount of damage they deal. And Scavenge Brawler, as among all the other things it puts on something, flying counter, vigilance counter, trample counter, and lifelink counter, when we renew it, it does put 4/1/1 counters on that creature. So yeah, that is our pump section. We have a little bit of evasion, ways to get past our opponent's defenses. Haggard Constrictor gives all of our creatures with 1/1 counters menace. Mask of Grizzlebrand gives the equipped creature flying, as well as lifelink. Karsi Revenant, and Scavenge Brawler, when we renew them, give their evasive abilities, flying and trample, to a creature, the target creature. And Arden makes all of our demons have menace, which is an evasive ability, and applies to both the demons in our deck and the demons that he creates. That's our evasion section. We have a section that makes a few tokens with one card we haven't seen. But first, Fang the Broker makes these Inkling tokens if we sacrifice artifacts. Elegy Acolyte, if we have Void, if we qualify for Void by the end step, then we get a 2/2 robot. Our Ritual Chamber can make us this 6/6 flying demon. And Arden makes copies of creatures that we exile from graveyards, except they are 5/5 demons. We also have Ghoul Collar Gisa, which is an interesting card in this deck. Just a good way for us to go wide if we need to. Ghoul Collar Gisa is 3 and double black for a 3/4 legendary human wizard that says we pay a black, tap her, and sacrifice another creature, and we make a number of 2/2 zombies equal to the power of that creature. So one more way, much like we had with Shadowheart or with Feign, to just have a creature that we hold up and say, oh, you're going to target our 12/8 Hunted Bone Brute with a removal spell? I'll pay a black, tap Gisa, sacrifice it, and just go ahead and make 12 black zombies. And then each of those triggers. We could pay 24 life then and make them all into 4/4s if we wanted to, or just do it for some of them, or do it for none of them. Being able to go wide sometimes is the thing we need. Ghoul Caller Gisa is in here so that we can do that. A nice thing for us to find with the Yaro's Oathsworn if it looks like that's where our game is going. That's our token section. We have a recursion section, just ways to bring things back from the graveyard. Not too much of it. 0-point ballot, of course. If X is 6 or more when we cast it, we can bring a creature that was killed by it back. Null Priest of Oblivion. If we kick it, we get to bring a creature back to the battlefield. Archenemy's Charm can return 1 or 2 creature cards or Planeswalker cards from our graveyard to our hand. Lets us cast them again. And Metamorphosis Fanatic also reanimates a creature and puts a lifelink counter on it when it enters. So a little bit of recursion for us to supplement everything here. And that covers every one of the spells in our deck. As usual, we're going to go over our lands now. It's not going to be too difficult because it's a monocolor deck. So we're running 28 basic swamps. Obviously, we're using the turtle art. So this works out great for us. Having plenty of access to untapped sources that give us our one color that we need seems great. We're running a few fixing lands as well. So Muruganda Raceway is one of the 3 cards in the deck, we've seen one of them already, that has Start Your Engines. This is a land that comes in untapped and taps for colorless. It also gives us a speed of 1, and then that speed, of course, once per turn, including the turn it comes in, increases if an opponent loses life during our turn, and then once we're at max speed, Muruganda Raceway can also tap for 2 colorless mana. So it becomes a soul land, like a soul ring. It taps for 2 rather than 1. We could tap it for 1 if we want. It still retains that ability, but it sort of levels up for us just by us doing what we were going to do anyway and causing our opponents to lose life on our turn. So that's pretty cool. Similar to that is Temple of the False God. This is, I know not everyone likes this card, but I think it's great for the kind of decks that I build. This is an untapped land that just taps for 2 colorless mana, but we can only activate it if we control 4 lands and it. So 5 or more lands, including itself. So not ideal early on, as opposed to Muruganda Raceway, which can tap for 1 early on. But if we get this out with a little bit of land acceleration, like our Wayfarer's Bauble, or if this comes out turn 5 when we have 4 other lands in play, we immediately have the ability to make 6 mana with it. So this is acceleration in our mana base, just not early on. So if your opening hand is like Temple of the False God and Muruganda Raceway and nothing else, probably you want a mulligan. You need to be able to have enough mana, enough black especially, at least 1 black, by turn 3 so that you can get out Madame Null turn 3 and get your whole game going. But yeah, Temple of the False God does accelerate you a little bit, just not early on, and we've got plenty of big things that it's worth having this. Similarly, but sort of from the other direction, is Myriad Landscape. This is a tap land that taps for colorless, but if we pay 2, tap, and sack it, we can search our library for up to 2 basic land cards that share a land type. So in this deck, 2 basic swamps. Put them on the battlefield tapped and then shuffle. So even though this comes in tapped, we have to pay to activate it, and the lands we find come in tapped. This is 1 land drop that eventually becomes 2 lands in play, so it is acceleration in our land base. Pretty nice to be able to do something like, play this turn 1, turn 2, play a basic swamp and use that 2 mana for something. Turn 3, play another swamp, cast Madame Null. Turn 4, maybe we have a play and we can use it for Madame Null, and we just hold up Myriad Landscape, keep making colorless mana. But the moment we have 3 mana we don't need, we use 2 of it and the landscape to get 2 swamps. It can really help us get ahead, especially in the sort of early to mid game. The last section we have here are these 7 utility lands. These are lands that give us not just access to mana, but also a few other things as well that are pretty nice. Our last Start Your Engines card is Amonkhet Raceway. This is a untapped land that starts our engines, of course gives us a speed of 1 and does all the other speed things I mentioned, and it taps for colorless. But once we're at max speed, Muruganda Raceway lets us tap for 2 colorless mana. Amonkhet Raceway gets a new ability that lets us tap to give a creature haste until end of turn. Again, we can use this politically. It says target creature. It doesn't have to be one of ours. We can make a deal with an opponent, say, hey, leave me alone, and I'll make your big creature you just played able to attack a different opponent this turn. Maybe they'll go for that. But generally, we want to play something pretty big of ours, like that Hunted Bone Brute, spend our 6 life to make it into a 12-8, tap our Amonkhet Raceway, and just swing. So we've tapped basically 4 mana sources, including the Raceway. We've spent 6 life, and now we're attacking with a 12-8 menace haste creature. The very turn it came in, that's just scary. Amonkhet Raceway can really do a lot for us in this deck. I'm usually a little doubtful, I should say, about cards that just give haste in a deck that's not built around it, but in this deck, this can just really perform well for us. Next up is Castle Lochthwain. A land that enters tapped unless we control a swamp, and it taps for black. Or we can pay 1 and double black and tap it, so we're tapping 4 lands essentially, to draw a card and then lose life equal to the number of cards we have in hand. So this is quite expensive in terms of life and in terms of mana. But if we're desperate for a card, Castle Lochthwain gives us access to it, and that's in our land base. Totally worth it. Costs us life, we're going to get our life back anyway. And it makes colored mana for us in the process. Just very strong. We have another sort of version of this effect that it doesn't make colored mana for us, but it costs a little bit less in the form of War Room. War Room, that's why it's a couple of dollars more. And I think it's probably a little bit better than Castle Lochthwain in this deck, but Castle Lochthwain tapping for black is just very strong. So this is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 3 and tap it and pay an amount of life equal to the number of colors in our commander's color identity, which is to say 1 to draw a card. So 3 and tap and 1 life to draw a card for a land that's always untapped but makes colorless mana. That's pretty great for $2 more than Castle Lochthwain. But Castle Lochthwain making black mana can really be relevant to us. So yeah, I think both are solid and good inclusions for us to have access to more cards if we need them. However, between the two of them, they're $11 of our 100 card deck, just these 2 lands. So you could definitely swap these for something else. If you don't really think you need the land, you could get rid of just one of them, or just turn them both into basic swamps and you'd be totally fine. I put Demolition Field in most of my decks because the type of decks I build are for pods where most people don't want to see their lands get blown up. And that's fair. That's not an experience everyone's looking for. But you have to have an answer to a non-basic land that is threatening. If someone's running a Rogue's Passage and they have this huge Voltron commander and you can't block it, well then you're out of luck. Or if they have a deck that's running a Maze of Ith or a Glacial Chasm or something that's stopping us from attacking them with our big attacking deck, we want to be able to answer that problem. Demolition Field being a single source of answer to a land, and in our land base, I think is completely fair. So this is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap and sack it to destroy a non-basic land that an opponent controls. And then that land's controller gets to search their library for a basic and put it on the battlefield untapped. And so do we. So neither we nor they are down a land, but we've gotten rid of a threatening problem at the table, and both players have a land that now they can tap for mana that same turn if they need to. So having an answer to a threat is what Magic is all about. And since they're not down a land, unless of course they didn't have any more basics in their library, then yeah, it's pretty fair for the kind of tables these decks are made for. But we are running Rogue's Passage ourselves, just in case. This is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 4 and tap it to make a creature unblockable this turn. This is primarily for our big things. If we have drained our opponents, if we have attacked them, and of course if they've been fighting each other, we get an opponent down far enough, Rogue's Passage may close out a game for us. It just makes it so we sneak in with one of our big brutes, and that maybe ends the game, or brings them down to the point where their life total is low enough that the next player can end the game for them. We can also use this politically, of course. We can say, hey, opponent A, I know you want to attack opponent B, but they've got good blocks. I will activate my Rogue's Passage so that you can attack them without being blocked if you will ignore me for a turn cycle, or help me out with some card draw, whatever deal you want to make with them. And then they say, oh, that sounds great. Go ahead and activate your Rogue's Passage. And we'll say, no, 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 no. If we activate our Rogue's Passage before you declare your attacker, then you could attack us and we wouldn't be able to block. And they will say, oh, that makes sense. I will, show the good faith here, since you are the power broker. And I will declare this creature attacking opponent B. And we'll say, okay, great. Before blocks, we will activate Rogue's Passage to make your thing unblockable. However, we can also do that to an opponent's creature without their permission. We don't need to make a deal with them. We could look and see that an opponent is attacking a different opponent. Maybe opponent B is attacking opponent C. And we're like, wow, if not for opponent C's blocker, opponent B would be killing them. Oh, well, before blockers, we activate Rogue's Passage, make their biggest, scariest thing unblockable. Both of those players are surprised, and we've just eliminated opponent C using opponent B's resources. So Rogue's Passage can be really powerful for us in so many different ways. We're running Terrain Generator, and you don't have to run the Stellar Sights Edge of Eternity's printing, but it's my favorite one. I like it a lot. And in a deck with a little bit more, that can really use a little bit more acceleration. I think we have enough acceleration in the deck, but it can never hurt. Terrain Generator is a good option for us. This is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 2 and tap it to put a basic land card from our hand onto the battlefield tapped. We have several different ways to draw a lot of cards, and even if that's not the case, if our hand ends up clogged up with basics, when we, if we don't have enough spells to cast, and so we've just got mana sitting there, Terrain Generator at least lets us use our mana to put lands into play, and then when we get spells out, maybe we're able to now cast them since we used it to accelerate as well. Seems good. Finally, we have a non-basic swamp. It's Witch's Cottage from Throne of Eldraine. It's a swamp, and it taps for black, but it comes in tapped unless we control 3 or more other swamps. So if this is in your opening hand, totally fine to just play this turn 1 as a tapped swamp. That's okay. But if you are able to use this for its other ability, you probably want to, because when it enters untapped, meaning we have at least 3 other swamps in play, we can put target creature card from our graveyard on top of our library. It's in our land base. The cost of inclusion is so tiny, it's 60 cents. It's nothing. So being able to get a creature back and have, it's slow recursion because we have to cast it and we have to draw it next turn, but being able to just play this as an untapped swamp, an untapped black source, and then immediately get our best creature in our graveyard back on top of our library, ready for us to either draw it that turn or draw it next turn, or maybe even cast it this very turn using Gwenum. Yeah. Lots of power here behind this, just in our land base for a little common land. And that sums it up. Again, I'm releasing new TMNT Commander decks every Thursday through mid-April when Secrets of Strixhaven drops. So let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a specific commander or a style of deck for that commander. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you want to support what I do here, make sure to like and subscribe, ring the bell if you want to be notified when my videos go live, consider becoming a member of the channel if you want to have access to my videos a little early, and most of all, remember that Magic is fun. You should play more Magic.